or on this computer. Cool. Let's share the screen. All right. And the lovely thing that Zoom does every single time I start sharing the screen, it decides, hey, let's move everything to a new place and resize the windows in a new way for funsies. Excellent. All right. So we kind of asked you to check the following values in Pry for the things, and using this this if else statement. And the idea is that there may be some surprises in here. Erica, what were some surprises that you saw in there that were? Well, I guess that's presumptuous. Did anything surprise you?
So at first, looking through it, I didn't really understand when it would jump to falsy, because we're just like plugging in a value. So it seemed like those values should just be truthy. But then it obviously started making more sense. Like when we typed in nil, that was falsy. And yeah, I was understanding that it was actually evaluating the value of whatever we were putting in, and not just like, I don't know.
Cool.
The word.
Yeah, totally. So which values were false? Were falsy?
Let's see. So nil was falsy. False without quotes was falsy. I think that's it actually.
Cool. And what was false in quotes? Evaluate to.
False in quotes was truthy, because it was a string and not the value of false.
Yeah, totally. Cool. Thank you. So that kind of leads us to this question. I think this bigger question, like why truthy and falsy rather than true and false? Doug, what do you think?
Because it's not providing a expressly true value or a false value. It's more like a concept that if you have nothing, then it can't be true. So nil and false are both falsy. And if you have something, then it's truthy.
Yeah, totally. And I think that the kind of big kind of issue here is that this is like an idea that like nothing, which is like essentially nil. We use the idea nil, that nil stands for nothing. Nothing is still something. And so if I go here, right, and open a Pry session, can you all see my screen? Is it sharing? If I type in nil, like the return's nil, right? But nil is a class, and nil has methods on it. False is a class. False is a thing, and these are still objects. Even though they are falsy, they still are something. I think that's kind of important. Like they're like when we say when we set something equal to nil, that is a nil object, and that's kind of weird, right? And so like knowing this and knowing that the two objects, the two kind of states are truthy, falsy, and the only things that are falsy are nil and false. We kind of remember, I think that we talked about this in a previous class of why we want to do like an assert equal true rather than an assert, because like this, it looks to see if things are true, and this is value is true. And so we can actually shorten up some of our logic, right? So we could do something like A equals hello, and we do puts A if A. We see that hello gets printed out because A is a string, which is true. So you do if a string, it will then print out whatever we have in there. Cool. Any questions so far? Any kind of clarifications about this weird land of logic? Ben?
Yeah, so my group and I kind of went over the double bang operator, like the negation operator. So I was wondering when it would be, if you can think of a use case for trying to like use the negation operator, because I think Doug had a really good explanation where it will return the
Yeah.
Boolean value. A really good
Yeah,
expression of
when you want something to explicitly return a true or false, you would do double bang. All right. So to kind of like recap what we were talking about that we've kind of covered in the flow control class. We have seen the comparison operators such as the double equal. Let me make this a little bigger. That's too big. That's about right. We have our old friends from grammar school, the greater than, the less than, the greater than equal, the other one. I cannot type today. The other one. And we have other operators such as the and. Regina, do you remember what and does? When if we were to do, let's say we were to do A double and B, what does that do?
It is including both of them.
Right. So what does it mean? Wait, can I explain to you what how? So let's do this way, right? If A is true and B is false, what does A double and or just and B return us?
True and false. It I don't know how to say it, but it includes them both. It wants,
Not quite.
Nope.
What does the and operator do? I don't want to jump in. Doug?
It requires something to either both be true or it's false.
Okay.
Or
so if
both
A is
be
true,
the statement.
right. So if A is true and B is false, what is A and B?
That would be false.
Yep, that would be false. Cool. And if B was true, Harrison, what would A and B give us?
That would be true because they both are true.
Cool. And we have, so that's the and, like and returns true and both are true. And we also then have the or operator, which is symbolized by the double pipes. The double pipes are above your backslash key, which should be kind of like above your enter key on the standard keyboard. And so this is called the or kind of review. This is kind of the or operator, and this will return true if one of these is true. So if A is true and B is true, what does A or B give us? Katie.
It gives us true.
He gives true. Why does he give us true?
Because it checks to see first if A is true.
Mm-hmm.
And if it is, it's going to return true. Or if B is, or it checks the other one. So if, like, let's say if in this case, A is false or B is true, because A comes first and it's false, it's going to return false.
Cool. Cool. And finally, the last kind of thing I want to talk about is the bang operator. And essentially, what it does is it negates something. So if I do bang A, what does this give me, Joseph?
What was A originally up top? Oh, it's false. It would be
Yep.
true.
Yep, it would be true. And I think that the tricky part, and I think that you'll probably run into with your Battleship project is like precedence. So the thing is that like when we're doing complex conditions, when we're comparing a bunch of things, we do have a list of precedents. And I'm gonna copy and paste this into your Slack channel. And this here is the order in which we kind of evaluate these things. So we could have a situation where A is false, but then we have B equals true, and then we have C equals true. And then we could potentially conduct ourselves a situation where we do A, do A double and B or C. And so it's like, well, that's annoying. But if we look at this, we see that the and gets operated on first, right? So we do if A and B, so we know that this is false and this is true. This will evaluate to what? Let's do Andrew J.
Would it be false?
Yep, because A is false, B is true, and gives us true only when both are true. All right, so and then we do that's false, C is true. What is true? That makes it true. I'm sorry, false or true. So what does this whole thing evaluate to?
And true.
Yep, it's true because this side, we do this side first because we saw in the thing that we do ands before ors. And so we know this is false, and then we do false or C, which is true. And because or will turn true if one of them is true, that will give us true for the whole thing. And this works very much like the PEMDAS you learned in school for for math order of operations. To be honest with you, I do not remember the order of operations for comparison like these logic symbols, because like that's another thing, because I have this theory that every single time I learn something new, something else gets pushed out, but you don't know what gets pushed out. So like what I do is that in order to kind of communicate more clearly what my intent is, I'll use parens like a champion. And so usually what I will do is that I will put parens over the things I want to run first. And I'll communicate very clearly what's happening. Now, like this here, this is functionally no different than the code that I had previously, right? Because we are going to calculate that and first, then the or. But like for you who may not be familiar with the order of operations for these logic operators, you can just look at this and like, okay, we're doing the and first. You didn't have to look up that chart, because like I have to Google that every single time I need to figure out the order precedence. I didn't have to look at the chart, figure out where my symbol was, and figure out which one goes first. I'll just evaluate that, and then it'll be the same. Adam?
Yeah, quick question. I don't even know what the example would look like, but if you use the parentheses in such a way, can you override the? Yeah. Okay, that's all I was curious about.
That's going to get to that. Yeah. Yeah. So like Adam was saying, if I wanted the or to go first, I would just do that, and that does the thing. Cool. So for example, if we were to put something, let's do one more together for funsies. Okay, let's do this. And let's take 30 seconds to kind of figure this out here. I'm not doing that. Has that been 30 seconds? That feels like 30 seconds. Jenny, what do you think? What are we going to get?
True.
All right, let's just run it. We'll find out. That's true, right? Because A and B, we evaluate the A and B side first, and then kind of show you like that this makes a difference. A and B or C, that will return false. Right. So this using in like again. If you would like to, you can just figure out the order precedence and remember that and just like write things the way you want to. But again, I prefer to use parentheses to be explicit, so it's very clear what I'm doing. Jake?
I agree with you. I like using the parentheses there too.
Mhm.
But is the order of precedence like left to right how it's written, or is it always that and goes before the or? I never learned the PEMDAS for like ands and ors.
Yeah, so the and will always go first. Like, so if you look at the Slack channel, I post a little picture. The top goes first. So we do the bang first, and then we do the operators that are greater than, less than those, and then we have the spaceship operator, which I don't use too often, the equals, the triple equals, the bang equals, which is the not equals, the bacon cannon, and the last one, I don't even know what that one. I've never even used that last one. And then we use the and, the or, and so forth.
So that's order of operations top to bottom. And then
Yep, top to bottom.
generally speaking, in our code, we've been told that it's not necessarily best practice to have more than one operator if we can. Is it like okay to have two in there? Is that like not great?
I mean, I think that like I'm firmly of the opinions that you gotta do what you gotta do. I would if I think 3 is probably my limit. Like 2 is great. Like you kind of have, 2 is fine. 3 is like we're trying to push it at around a 3-ish, depending on how complex it is. I would start think about how I would break this out into predicate methods.
Cool.
Just like breaking out parts of it so it's a little more readable. So like that so it's like, it's just like, the thing is that no one wants to read a long string of Boolean logic. Like that's just unintuitive. So like converting that into a method with a plain English name is going to be like, is just going to be so much more easy to read and like understandable. Because it's like, to give like to pull out an example out of Battleship, it's like, would you rather to see if A equals this and this does not equal that, or rather if empty square, if ship occupied and not been shot at, right? They're like, yeah, if the square is not occupied and the ship's not been shot at, or like that makes no sense in terms of Battleship, but I'm using Battleship words. The idea is that we want to use words in the kind of problem domain that we're using. And like usually that helps with understanding better. Doug?
When we're using an if statement, is that evaluating against truthy and falsy or true and false?
What do you mean? Functionally, there's no real difference. So can you go more detail? Can you kind of restate your question a little bit about like what you mean by what we're evaluating against?
So I guess if you write an if statement that said if string, do something.
Yeah.
Would that be if that string returns true, or if that is a
string will always
statement?
return true.
Okay.
The string will always return true. So it's really looking for truthiness and falsiness.
Okay, so it is evaluating against truthy or falsy versus an explicit true or false statement. Okay.
If you want to evaluate against explicit true, you have to do if something double equals true. You're looking for looking for an explicit match. And like that's when you'd use that. I generally just evaluate the truthy falsy, unless I'm looking for that explicit true, explicit false, explicit value match. Because it's just less typing. At the same time, like you'll find that a lot of this doesn't matter, because it's like let's say, I think a good example is that if you were to see if if I generally prefer to use methods. I don't usually like to use conditional operators. And the idea is that I want to explicitly send messages. So it's like, instead of doing if array equals empty array, I would much rather if array dot empty. Right? I'd rather do that instead of doing if value equals nil. I would much rather value dot nil. I just feel that's like much easier to read for people. Cool. So this is kind of like a primer on how to deal with complex Boolean, start to deal with complex Boolean things. Other questions? Any other questions we have before I kind of move on about what I want you to do next? Did someone Slack me? Why did someone Slack me? No, different organization. All right.